Hello, sorry about the interruption. I forgot to delete some video earlier, and so it kind of interrupted the storage capacity on my phone. So I'll continue on. This is, I guess, what you could label it part 2 of the lesson about Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 10. What we were doing, we were talking about the problem passages some additional problem passages that premillennialists have with this. With Revelation and prophecy in general. And I just started reason number 2. And that is that in Revelation 11, 12 and following, the final judgment, the 7th trumpet, and eternity, note eternity, not a millennium, follow the rapture that's in verse 12. This same chapter 11, verses 1 and following, shows that the times of the Gentiles is followed by the 7th trumpet and eternity, not a millennium. Thirdly, in the parable of the tares, Matthew chapter 13, the judgment is followed by heaven and hell, not a millennium. This is a vital point. The premillennialist believes the church will be judged at the judgment seat of Christ, 2 Corinthians 5:10, and the rapture before the 1,000 years begins, and that heaven and hell will not begin until after the 1,000 years has ended. Observe how the parable of the tares contradicts the premillennial theory. Now let me see. The parable of the tares, biblical passages, contradicts the premillennial theory. So what do we believe? The biblical context. And then it has eternity in heaven and hell following immediately. Number 4, again, it is eternity, not millennium, that follows the sheep and goat judgment in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46. And again, this is vital, for many premillennialists place the sheep and goat judgment before the millennium as well. The same point about eternity, not a millennium, following the judgment can be seen when Matthew 24:30 and 24:50 are read, that we talked about last week. And then fifthly, all the enemies of Christ, the Antichrist, Satan, all the hosts of evil will be overthrown before the parousia, or the rapture, and the resurrection of the righteous. For the last enemy that shall be conquered is death, 1 Corinthians 15:26. And death, of course, is conquered by the resurrection of the dead bodies at the second coming of Christ. Now, in the premillennial way of thinking, this is the order of events. Church age is closed by the rapture. Then follows the Great Tribulation, closed by Armageddon. Then comes the millennium, closed by the battle of Gog and Magog. In other words, the millennium, as they see it, is closed with wicked people, the enemies, attacking the church. Now, even if we were to admit all their interpretations to be true, how can there be any enemies, wicked people, at all towards the close of the millennium? If they have all been destroyed by the resurrection of the righteous, which takes place at the beginning of the millennium. And the context of 1 Corinthians 15:26 has been speaking of the parousia coming. Just look at 1 Corinthians 15, verse 23. Revelation 20 has shown that the church age among the Gentiles is to be followed by a little season, and that this, in turn, is to be followed by the great white throne judgment with its eternal rewards and punishments. Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 and following. So, I hope you've enjoyed our study today on Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 10. As much as I have enjoyed presenting this lesson, next week we'll be talking about Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 through 13, the measuring of the temple and the 2 witnesses. And so until then, I hope you have a great rest of the week, and may God bless you.